So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the work I'm doing right now on understanding a little bit how to design connected products. So right now, a lot of people are trying to build products that are connected, what they call the Internet of Things. And one of the things that's happening right now is that there's a lot of people that do that, but there's not a lot of stuff that makes a lot of sense right now. There's a lot of strange stuff happening. It's at the beginning of an industry, so everybody's trying things out. And so we're trying to figure out also what are the guiding principles for what we do and what we like to do. So I try to work a little bit on the, so this is going to be a little bit philosophical and maybe less technical in certain aspects, but let's see how it goes. All right, I wanted to show you this short video. So tomorrow's pipe today. And so the problem is that obviously you get that this is a joke, right? Well, when this thing came out and people posted it on YouTube, people thought that it was a real thing. Like even I think even like TechCrunch published it as like a real thing and then put an update saying, sorry, we figured out it was a joke. And actually this was made for Adult Swim, the TV channel. So the funny thing is that the videos we see on Kickstarter, the products that people are designing, they are more and more like this. That it's becoming sort of difficult to understand when people are joking or they're actually thinking about, those are the products they're thinking about building. So this is, welcome to the age of the Internet of Things. This graph here is what they call a Gartner Curve. It kind of indicates the life cycle that all innovations in technology tend to go through, or at least according to Gartner, and they get paid a ton of money to draw these graphs, so I guess they must be right. And so what it says basically that every technology goes through this peak of hype where everybody has like huge expectation about a technology. Then you see what happens. They basically crash and burn. Everybody thinks that Internet of Things was bullshit, and then suddenly it starts to pick up again and it becomes something useful for people's lives. So look, in 2015, IoT was up there. So you know what's going to happen now, no? There's going to be a lot of disillusionment. A lot of people are unhappy with this because I guess there is an issue with, there's I guess a couple of misconceptions. A lot of people tend to equate Internet of Things with smart thermostats for your home, and it's much more than that. But the part of the Internet of Things that right now is impacting and can impact your life the most is the least sexy one. So people are like, who cares about this kind of. So I'm going to try to show you both sides of the world. But actually, what's happening, there is this. We're going through this evolution where you can fit computation into objects that you can put. You can put it on an e-ring, or you can put sensors in everywhere. So clearly, there is this tendency, to have these small bits of computation spread out on your body and the world, in the environment, and now you can also have connectivity. So there is this evolution that we're going through, and it's interesting how, where we started and where we're going, and it's interesting to understand what's going to happen in the next things that we don't have because we don't know exactly what's going to happen. So one of the things I was mentioning is this thing they call the Internet of Things, or I know every time I say Internet of Things, Tom gets another white hair, and that's why he's like that. I said that too many times. Sorry about that. I'll pay for your sort of hair transplant. Now, but the idea is there is actually two parts, as I mentioned. There's a commercial Internet of Things, which is about the smart toilet pipe and stuff like that, and there's a part which is about what they call the industrial Internet of Things, or the Germans call it Industry 4.0, which is more, it's looking at bigger scale problems, less sexy problems, less exciting problems, but much stronger impact on people's lives. So this is a diagram that somebody at Libellium, which is a Spanish company that's been working a lot on wireless sensor networks, that shows a lot of the context where you can have connected devices that can actually improve and impact your life. And other people have been drawing these kind of diagrams. This is, I think, LG. So a lot of people are trying to figure out how this thing fits into people's life. And one of the things I wanted to show, which is actually useful, is this graph basically says what happens if we save 1% in some big industry that are not obviously sexy for the people who want to do connected devices, but they actually impact people's lives. So if you save 1% of the fuel in commercial aviation, then you save $30 billion. Or if you find a way to reduce by 1% the cost of exploration and development for oil, you save $90 billion. In healthcare, 1% reduction in system inefficiency can result in $63 billion of savings. So, something tiny like a 1% change can have a massive impact on a lot of people's lives. So these are interesting problems that are not sexy. I know because I know people who work on this kind of stuff, and they say, people think what I do is really boring, but I actually impact on people's life, and people get very excited about thermostats, but they are less of an impact on the general population. So this is the kind of a German slide trying to show what's what their evolution, what they think is going to impact in the way we do industry. So the fact that we have machines that are connected, factories that are connected, everything is connected, it's amazing. And so we're going towards a world where this was in 2011, Cisco predicted there was going to be 25 billion connected devices, and they expect 2020 to have 50 billion of connected devices. But there is a question that I've been asking myself for a long time: where's this connected fridge? There's no connected fridge. So we're still, figuring out why we don't have a connected fridge. And this is a frame from a video that I think Whirlpool made in 1982, and there's still no connected. In fact, there's even a blog that's called, that's basically they're asking themselves, where's the connected fridge? There's no connected fridge. There's a picture there of a connected fridge running Windows that basically when you go to get your drinks out of the fridge, it tells you the news. And it's like, and we do have a problem in the way technology kind of fits in the home as well. No? There were some false starts, like this ad from Honeywell from the 60s. It's a computer that, when they say, they're kind of claiming that this computer computes better than the lady can cook. But this thing was designed for you the idea was that you would buy this computer to store recipes, and you would keep that thing in your house. So clearly there's a kind of a problem when you bring technology into people's lives. But what happens right now, I think we understand very well the technology. We have a lot of technologies that are maturing, and to the point that there's way too much stuff going on. This is a slide made by an investor in New York, Matt Turk, who is working for First Mark Capital. He made a slide with almost every icon of every company that's doing all the bits and pieces of quote unquote IoT. So there's an Arduino kind of at the bottom right there, next to that fruit, and the Raspberry Pi fruit. The raspberry, next to the Raspberry Pi. And then you see there's like a ton of these, and this is not even all of them, it's just what fit into one slide. So there's like a ton of people, and everybody's building a consortium. So this is a consortium. There's another consortium with more people. This is so large that they had to drop the icons and just have text. And there's another consortium. This is another consortium of We Are British, so we do our own consortium. And so, there's obviously an issue of everybody's trying to say, I made a consortium with other 50 companies. Our technology is fantastic. You need to use our technology. Our technology is best. Whatever you're doing doesn't make any sense. Use our technology and all of that. So somebody mentioned it, I think, before. There is this issue of this proprietary platform, and everybody tries to get you to use their platform. And the number of people who are working on this thing is getting big. Like a survey made last year estimates there are 4.5 million people in the world who consider themselves IoT developers. So there's a lot of people apparently who are working on it, but they all don't really understand the what and the why, So that's why there is this beautiful website called We Put a Chip in It. Subtitle is, it was just a dumb thing, then we put a chip in it, now it's a smart thing. And that's kind of what's happening, And I'm not kidding, the first product that you see on the homepage is Floss Time, the world first smart floss dispenser. This is not a video it's not a joke from SNL, it's an actual company that actually had a Kickstarter, and somebody gave them $53,000 to make the floss thing, which I'm sure it does beautiful things. But what I'm saying is that there's clearly an issue of trying to understand what's really important in this field, what devices can do for us, and also what are some of the guiding principles that, behind this thing. So we try to work a little bit on what could be some guiding principles around this. So I've been working for a bit on kind of a manifesto type thing that I haven't finished writing yet, but working on it. And I started a little bit from these three keywords: good, clean, and fair. So there is this movement in Italy that's actually global now called slow food, which started off as an opposition to the arrival of American fast food in Italy. And the three principles are, they say that food should be good, clean, and fair. And they, in a way, they try to look at the way you can keep food making, food consumption, adhere to some principles that are good for you. So I tried to, we figured out that there was some parallels between what they were doing on food and what can be done on technology. So clearly, what is good? For us, good is open source, clearly. So we think that open source is good for innovation. We think that if you have large parts of what you develop as open source, you can actually guarantee that it's easier to understand if you're doing something nasty. It's good for innovation. It's more inclusive. One of the issues that I think it's interesting is that when people say, oh, we need to be more inclusive, because we need to have more people in technology, we need to embrace all sorts of people and get them to technology. Well, the best way to be inclusive is to design tools that are good for everybody, not just for a section of the population. And so if you try to be as inclusive as possible in the tools that you develop, in the way you explain technology, in the way you engage with people, and open source is pretty good at that, I think, in some aspects, you will have more diverse groups of people participating in the innovation process and coming up with ideas that don't apply only to a very narrow section of the population. And it's about, not always about open source everything, even just a bunch of open protocols and open source implementation of those protocols. So in a way, the moment we create pipes that connect all the different plumbing of the IoT, which is where we know what's going on those pipes, we can actually connect the dots. We can work with multiple systems. It needs to be something that people can put together and assemble very quickly. This is an advertisement for this toy I had when I was a kid, where you could assemble a radio by these cubes, the magnetic cubes with parts. You would snap them together, and you could build a radio in 2 minutes. I guess back then, building a radio was the coolest thing you could do. Now you probably do. Look, I made a thermostat in 2 minutes. And but the idea is, still tools that are open, tools that are inclusive. If a kid can be part of thinking about connected devices, obviously you will get points of view that are very different from the kind of predominant point of view that we have now. So open source and open innovation. So we like these processes where people are involved in innovation. If you still have time to read, there is this book from Eric von Ippel called Democratizing Innovation, where he shows how he studied how people participate in the innovation process and how sometimes people help companies innovate. And so obviously open source community are a fantastic example of groups of people coming together to innovate around something they feel is important. Quick example, this is the Safecast. Have you ever heard of it, Safecast? It's a project they did in Japan after that nuclear reactor exploded. And so they built a bunch of these Geiger counter based on Arduino, and they gave them to a bunch of people. And each one of these was reading the data, sending it to a map. And they built a real-time map of the intensity and location of radiation on the coast. And they were able to demonstrate that the radiation was more intense and went deeply inland than the government was saying. So, this is a form of a quick innovation put together by a group of people, deployed quickly, to provide people with information that the government was sort of, let's say, hiding or filtering. I thought that's an interesting, rapid response by people. Clean. One aspect I think of clean, to me, is the problem. There's a lot of disposable design right now. Disposable, yes, so you could see at this. For example, this is mobile phones from the early 2000s. There was a company here in the US that was thinking about making these GSM phones that once you're done using them, they just throw them away. No? And clearly now that we have smartphones, we are holding on to the phones a little bit longer. But this idea was that you get it, you run out of credit, you throw it away. But actually, we used to have much more stronger relationship with objects. There's people that still have their grandfather's radio, and they still like it, and funnily enough, if you turn it on, you can still listen to the radio. And while we have an issue with long-term user experience and sustainability of these devices, some devices stop functioning after a very short amount of time, and there are no riots in the middle of the street. People go like, okay, it doesn't work anymore. Okay, so there's an interesting change in the relationship that people have with the objects. And one of the most famous, let's say, commenter on IoT, she wrote this. She described the status of these IoT products that we use as a situation where there is a lack of standard, a disregard for usability. There is an incoherent story about what smart homes can do. So even if the smart home context is a place where people really want to design things for, there is no real story that makes complete sense. And there's a lot of issues with usability of products. Products cannot be given a new life. If a product you're using, the service somehow dies, it becomes a piece of plastic that you have to throw away. And this is an example, this other blog, the Internet of 404s. It's a list of devices that have stopped operating. Do anybody remember these rabbits? Have you seen these rabbits anywhere? So this was the product of a French startup a few years ago. They made these rabbits that could be connected to the network, and you could program them. You could tie basically the movement of the ears and the kind of the two events. So you could change the weather would move the ears or color the thing. And it was called Nabastag. And then one day they realized that they have a hard time explaining to people that they had to pay $20 a month for the subscription for this thing to work. And so people sometimes have a problem understanding that I paid $100 and something for this, and now I have to pay $20 a month to get the ears of this rabbit moving when the weather is changing. So clearly there's a problem with this kind of, they died and they became essentially, then people started to hack them. People started to hack them and use them for all sorts of other stuff. But because they were simple enough that you could understand how they worked and you could hack them. But this blog has a bunch of other devices of companies that are gone, and there are now bits of plastic. There's also a larger issue of what the availability of design objects. Now, in a way, when we look at a remote, most of the people get that. And then this is considered fancy. But in a way, when design started to develop as a discipline, industrial design, it wasn't at all about designing stuff for rich people. It was about designing beautiful and functional objects for as many people as possible, to create processes that would make these objects affordable to a bunch of people, and not only to the rich people who could go to a craft person and get a beautifully handmade object. So And then now we are now in a situation where beautiful design is for people who can spend money, and the others get a piece of plastic because you can buy a remote like that for 10 cents of a dollar in Shenzhen. So when people make a device, they just throw in one of these. No? So in a way, there is this issue that it's not only about, it's this kind of flipping around of the design world where design is becoming for rich people. And the last element that I looked at is fair. There is one problem that a lot of the things we use right now on the internet, basically the product, you are the product. So when you use a service that you don't pay anything for, clearly you are the product. Clearly the service is essentially selling you to other people for money because you're not giving them any money, so they have to sell you. And obviously all these connected products are connected to online services, and these online services, they do what they want with the data. And a lot of the online services that you use, they don't actually tell you exactly what they do with the data, or the terms and conditions are so thick and so complex that who wants to read them, And so what happens is that you go to the toilet, you flush the toilet, and that event is captured by a sensor that sends it to a server that triggers a bunch of deep learning algorithms that try to analyze what's going on in your life. And so obviously you have to be okay with that. And we got, at least with phones, we got to convince the people who make the smartphones to tell us, look, this application wants to access your camera. Do you want to allow it to do that? But a bunch of other devices that we use in the home, the device doesn't say, hi, this thermostat is spying on you, figuring out if you're at home or not. Are you sure you want to let this thing do it or not? So this is a cartoon from a British cartoonist that's trying to explain the future of supermarkets, where as you walk through the supermarket is reminding you that you have hemorrhoids, you like Daniel Steele, and you might have some problem with incontinence. Even if these things don't pop up in the supermarket knows that. They don't put it on big screens, but they know that. So obviously, how do we create a situation where people feel safe and in control of their data? That's a big challenge. There's no solution right now for real, but we're thinking about it. What can we do? So this is in 2012. The chief of CIA did say, we'll spy on you through the dishwasher. That's why I never use the dishwasher in the US. I just keep it locked and wrapped in tin foil and hope for the best. No, but the question is, somebody actually figured out, somebody published on a website a while ago that in Russia, people found there was this kettle, this water boiler that had been modified. But this not modified inland, modified in China. Before they shipped it, they had a circuit. They would connect to the first open Wi-Fi network and start sending data. So they said they shipped this thing to Russia. And people found them inside a kettle. There was an article online a couple of years ago. That was interesting and shocking that they got pre-wired for login data using open networks. I don't know exactly what they're expecting to do, but it's an interesting concept that Wi-Fi devices are cheap enough that you can just throw them into the kettle and hope that you gather some interesting data. So clearly there are some interesting aspects where you don't want to end up with AI that looks like this, that's kind of looking at you. And so what we're trying to figure out is what does it mean to translate those things that I just said into platforms that people can use to build connected devices? Can we create platforms that help people build these kind of devices and solve some of the problems for them? So this is the challenge that we are trying to do now with Arduino and what we call the Arduino Cloud and these other products that are around that particular work that we're doing. I'm going to show you a couple of things more. So this is the last cartoon for the presentation. Somebody had this, Again, this is another issue where your devices know so much about you that Google ads tell you what's going on in your apartment before before you get a call from your neighbor saying your apartment is on fire, Google Ads already offer you temporary housing and extinguishers. So, you know what I mean, no? That's an interesting, so can we try to build tools or make people aware of these things that are happening, and so that we can get a world of connected devices that are useful for people, they solve real problem, and they are open, sustainable, and fair. So we started, today we opened this mini website that tries to touch some of these these aspects and gives some of the early tools on how to build your own connected device. It's version 1 of 100, so this is just 1% of what stuff we're working on, but we thought it would be good to just start opening up some of the code and some of the documentation. So we try to explain to people how we build some devices, provide the code, the hardware, the software, and we're also working on a bunch of other tools. We are now very close to release of this particular tool. We have a few hundred people in Europe that are using this thing right now. It's a kit made of sensors, and each sensor has a tiny little computer in there. So when you plug them together, you don't need to program anything because they all recognize each other, and they basically build a development tool automatically. So when you plug a light sensor, it says, I'm a light sensor, and then you draw lines between the sensors, and you can create some behaviors. So, and you can also solder these modules on another PCB, and you can create a prototype of a connected device very quickly. At the moment, there's about 1,000 of these kits around that are being used in different parts of Europe by testers. Also as part of a research project we're doing with the EU. And, but we're gonna be launching this as a product very soon. And the idea here is, if I build a tool that doesn't require you to know anything about electronics in order to build a complex device, and I try to build software that gives you essentially all the plumbing, as we call it, for connecting different things. And it's all open source, and you can see the open source code if you want to, but you can just use it as well. You can just plug things in and use it. We think we can accelerate the process. One last thing I want to show you. We're also doing some real life testing. We have this apartment for a year, more or less, in Torino called Casa Yasmina. It's an experiment that we have been working on with this writer called Bruce Sterling. I don't know if you know Bruce, but Bruce is a science fiction writer, futurologist, design theorist, and a bunch of other things, and also very skeptical about the future of connected devices. So it's really good to have a space which is partially curated by Bruce, where we test. Bruce calls it open source luxury, because we have furniture, we have hardware, we have software, which is all open source. So everything in the apartment is open source. And we experiment with technology. Let's see if I have some pictures. So all of the furniture is manufactured in the Fab Lab that's downstairs. This is the only non-open source piece of the house, which is the kitchen. It's Italy, you have to have a beautiful kitchen, and open source kitchens don't really get to the yet. But this is from a company called Val Cucina that makes beautiful kitchens. But this is what they call their maker kitchen, because it's all sort of modular, and you can rearrange it and disassemble it, reassemble it. It's a very interesting kitchen. We also have like a garden where you can and you can also have barbecues. There is all the furniture, as I said, is manufactured either in the Fab Lab downstairs or in some of the companies in the area. So it's all based on files that get shared and sent to the factory. And we're also building a bunch of devices. And some of the devices that we are building are on this IoT mini website that we launched today. So you can download the hardware, the design, the software, the cloud component, and also there's the shape of the object is also downloadable as a file that you can 3D print. So we have people that come and spend time here do projects with us there, do presentations. We are also putting this thing on Airbnb. We haven't been successful at doing that yet because it's Italy, and if you want to do it legally, it takes a year of paperwork and stamps in order to get your apartment on Airbnb. You could just do it, and it takes 1 second. But if you want to do it legally, it's 1 year. But the idea is that if anybody wants to stop by Torino and spend some time there and play around with the technology, add something to the apartment, experiment what it means to develop connected devices with a slightly different philosophy, feel free to look up Casa Jasmina and send them an email. And from my side, we're working on this kind of stuff. It's not fully developed into code yet. It's mostly now recipes, ideas, and the code is happening slowly. But we hope we can get there and we can show that there are alternatives way to think about the way we do connected devices. Thank you.